So the Heisei verse has pretty much gone on my channel uncontested. It is one of the more powerful Godzilla verses, with them having Universal as a base, 5-dimensional on their higher ends, and then there's hyperversal scaling for the verse as a whole due to, I'm gonna say Super Godzilla, Space Godzilla Super Gravity. But today we're gonna put a monster against it that actually should be able to overcome it. The Tarrasque from Dungeons and Dragons. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please comment down below, like and subscribe, and share it with your friends. So when it comes down to this here, we're going to go all the way to Burning Godzilla. If you guys don't know how these verses work, we make sure a character can actually reach the end of the verse and fight against or fight on par with the strongest character. And if they, clear it, they clear it. If they don't, they don't. So Tarrasque is going to be going all the way to Burning Godzilla. But how strong is Tarrasque? Well, believe it or not, his bio actually reads off that he is one of the most dangerous monsters on the material plane. And this is important because there are actually a plethora of monsters on the base level of the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. You see, Dungeons and Dragons is a 3-layered, infinitely layered multiverse, meaning each layer or each plane in the Dungeons and Dragons verse is all infinitely layered, putting it at a high hyperversal level. Now, Tarrasque was actually below basic dragons. Yeah, so the basic fire, ice, lightning, and dark dragons, they scale above Tarrasque. Crazy, ain't it? Now, Tarrasque's scaling for the mightiest creature in the plains outside of dragons will put him above things like Python as a lower end. Now, Python is a being that can easily ignite the cores of dead worlds, pretty much giving it I guess you could say giving life to planets here. However, there is a much higher entity that Tarrasque scales above, and that is the Leviathan. You see, the Leviathan is one of the few most dangerous creatures in the material plane, but it's confirmed to be below Tarrasque. Interesting, ain't it? Now, the Leviathan, simply by waking up, was able to shake the entire planet. Well, you might say, well, Legendary, that's not interesting at all here. You just said Heisei has a universal base. Well, about to get to that. Did you know that it took 3 entire pantheons to defeat and just seal away the Leviathan? They couldn't kill him. And yet, they fear Tarrasque, calling him the mightiest creature of the material plane. And they can't beat him unless they have a specific spell. Now, this is important here for multiple reasons because the Dungeons and Dragons, cosmology has these 3 pantheons of gods: the Norse, the Greek, and the Egyptian pantheons. All of these pantheons scale, you could actually say, somewhat relative to each other here. And again, reminder, Tarrasque is above them, and a basic dragon is above Tarrasque. Frightening, ain't it? Now, back to Tarrasque here, he would actually scale above the Leviathan because, again, he is the mightiest creature of the material planes, and he's only confirmed to be below dragons. But again, dragons actually do exist on a much higher spectrum in the Dungeons and Dragons verse, than Tarrasque. So Tarrasque pretty much is the mightiest creature outside of an actual dragon. So with that being said here, scaling above the Leviathan, who actually is above multiple gods put together, he would actually scale above Odin. Odin is above Mystra. Now, Mystra actually embodies the weave. The weave in Dungeons and Dragons is actually a tether for all the magic in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. And again, this will put Mystra as kind of like a tether, or I guess you say like a maid for magic. She's able to tend to it, fix it, restore it. All the magic in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse, and yet Odin is above her. This again will put her at a high hyperversal level, and Odin is simply above her. Then you also have Zeus and the rest of the Greek gods. You see, they were able to fight and kill the Titans. Interesting, ain't it? With the Titans embodying the concepts of the very Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. This also puts him above, or the Leviathan above, beings like Asmodeus, another god who is able to move the abyss. The abyss is an infinitely layered void. So again, this puts them at a high hyperversal level. Tarrasque is above the Leviathan, who scales above these multiple gods put together. So this would actually put him at a high hyperversal level, or you could actually argue Tarrasque is outer versal. Interesting, ain't it? But maybe I'll put him against a much tougher and stronger Godzilla here. But let's talk about the Heisei verse as a whole here. Now, believe it or not, the Heisei versus base is actually universal. This is important because you have multiple statements that Heisei Godzilla is stronger and more powerful than the end of series Showa. Now, this is important because Showa Godzilla was able to fight and compete with enemies of Zone Fighter and even rip them apart, even fighting against a stronger version of his kaijus of King Ghidorah and Gigan respectively, with him being able to kill Gigan with nothing more than his tail. Meanwhile, it's also confirmed that Ghidorah was one of Zone Fighter's strongest enemies at the time. And believe it or not, again, this is important because Ghidorah would then get stronger by the time Destroy All Monsters came out, and he had to be jumped by everyone. And again, Heisei Godzilla scales above all that, which would actually put him at a Universal Plus, and you could possibly argue low multiversal because of how the scaling works in the Showa era. Then you also have the fact that he was able to defeat the Japanese gods of Yamato no Orochi and Utsuno Ikuzagami. Both of these beings have their own incredible feats here, with Utsuno Ikuzagami being able to split time in half, and Orochi being able to bend hyperspace to to attack fourth dimensional creatures and objects. So you have a much higher level. But then you also have the Space Godzilla scaling, where Space Godzilla is able to bend supergravity. Supergravity is a 12th dimensional ability that allows Space Godzilla to basically warp anything how he does and allows him to negate gravity on a much higher spectrum. This would easily put him at hyperversal. But then you also have the sheer fact that Godzilla, Destroyer, and other monsters later on in the Heisei series like Bagan and even Super Godzilla would be above this level. So without further ado, let's actually begin here, and we'll talk about Tarrasque abilities as we go on. First one up is Biolante. Now, while Biolante does have her more acid breath, she has her other abilities and stuff like that there, I really don't see her being a problem for Tarrasque at all here. For starters, Tarrasque is immune to poison. He's conventionally more durable than she is, and is definitely a lot faster, being able to fight against and dominate monsters on the material plane, which actually do scale to some of the more faster than light monsters like Python and stuff like that, who crosses from planet to planet, just heating their course casually. And while Biolante is terrifying to look at in the Dungeons and Dragons verse here, she doesn't have anything that can really affect them. For starters, Tarrasque has a astronomical level of regeneration, to the point where if there's like just a piece of this dude left, he'll just regenerate right there. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He'll just come back. Like, I guess you could say kind of perfect cell style, but again, it's like 10 million times faster. But here's the thing. He also has his own gravity manipulation and a reflective carapace, which allows him to deflect attacks back at his opponent, and his earth binding ability, allowing him to, well, just lift his opponents up and just crush them with gravity. I don't really see any real problem in this situation with Tarrasque just manipulating gravity, lifting up Biolante, and just crushing her like a bug. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. Next up, we have Mothra and Batra. And believe it or not, these two suffer the same fate. And unfortunately, it really is going to be because they don't really have anything that can affect them. They have poisons, they have their reflective scales. The best they can do is honestly try to physically fight him, and, well, reflective carapace, regeneration. He also has an ability that bypasses his opponent's. He also has an ability that bypasses his opponent's resistance. Sorry about that. And well, that's not going to be too good for two magical based moths. As a matter of fact, he also has an ability that allows him to just extract the magic from his opponent, leaving them powerless. Now, this does depend if you do think Mothra and Batra are magical based opponents. Me personally, I think they are. Considering some of them do possess things like sealing abilities, they're able to time travel, change multiple forms and stuff there. I do think they do possess a little bit of abilities. I'm just saying here. And then you have the sheer fact that Tarrasque can just ignore all that. Ignore any resistance they have to like physical trauma and stuff like that there. And then again, he could just run through a lot of their attacks and just snatch them. He's just as fast as they are, and possibly even faster, considering I guess you could say some of the faster than light scaling in Heisei was... never mind. I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, moving on. Space Godzilla, right? Now, this one is actually pretty funny. Considering both of these guys can manipulate gravity, I actually think they would cancel out. Or, if worse comes to worse, they create a black hole. Like, just throwing their gravity or their gravitational abilities around here. Now, I do think Space Godzilla definitely has the long range advantage, just like every monster here. Only difference is that he can, kind of keep Tarrasque at a long range for a decent amount of time. And again, he can also negate gravity, but again, Tarrasque can do that as well. He could probably blast him, but I do think the Chrono Beam would probably reflect off of the carapace of Tarrasque over here. So, excuse me. How does Tarrasque actually win this, in my opinion? In all honesty, I think it's just going to have to come down to stamina and regeneration. Tarrasque's regeneration is just much faster. It's instant. He has a far better healing factor. He doesn't have two giant crystals as a weakness. Matter of fact, his weakness is a very specific spell. Something that you have to use once you vaporize him and make sure that there's no piece left. Do I think Space Godzilla has the capability of vaporize him? Honestly and unfortunately, no. I do think he could probably knock out Tarrasque, but again, that would actually be a tall order considering how adorable he is. And then there's also the sheer fact that even Space Godzilla's shields may not work because he can bypass the durability and defenses and resistances of his opponent. So with that being said here, it's very possible that Space Godzilla just prolongs the fight here, and then bam, Tarrasque takes it. Next up, we have Destroyer. Now, this one is actually a bit more fair when it comes to their regenerative abilities. Destroyer is much faster of a healer than Space Godzilla. And believe it or not, this is going to be a bit of an, issue. Well, kinda, if you really want to say that here. Now, we do know that Destroyer can also drain the energy from his opponents. I don't even know if I'm allowed to show this. I mean, that is blood, kinda, and he's frothing at the mouth here. YouTube, please don't, strike me or anything. But anyway, we also have to deal with the fact that Destroyer is definitely an energy absorber as well. Grabbing someone with his tail, draining their energy or their DNA, and just going along with it. Now, I do think that is a problem, because what if he gets a hold of Tarrasque and just zaps his DNA? The only way I could see this happening or see Tarrasque winning is if he does actually bypass any resistance Destroyer has. But then again, it might be too late. Destroyer might actually have his healing factor at that point here. And well, if that's the case, then Tarrasque could be cooked. His Destroyer's healing factor may not be as fast as his, but it's definitely just as instant. And then adding Tarrasque's regeneration on top of it, yeah, that might be a little bit too much here. But then again, Tarrasque might be able to avoid the attacks. He is faster than Destroyer, or at least more agile than he is. But then we also have Godzilla. Might have to make an individual on this with IDW Godzilla versus Tarrasque. That sound interesting to y'all? But as for Burning Godzilla versus Tarrasque, well, believe it or not, Godzilla also has the ability to absorb other people's DNA, even if it's not kind of a direct thing, which is actually pretty interesting here. Now, because of all the abilities Tarrasque has, the regeneration, plus Godzilla's meltdown and stuff here, even though his healing factor was like on overdrive at that time, in all honesty, it's kind of weird because I feel like Tarrasque could stop at Destroyer, especially with the whole tier equalization thing here. Sorry if I forgot to mention that earlier. But again, I do feel like Tarrasque could at the very least beat Godzilla. He could reflect the atomic breath. He could easily regenerate from anything Godzilla does pretty easily. And well, in all honesty, I don't know. I do think the burning form definitely gives him an advantage when it comes to the healing factor. But then we also have the more, I guess you say, higher scaling for Tarrasque as well here. He's able to fight beings that can affect concepts, meaning he's durable on a more conceptual level than most of the monsters here. So again, he does have the edge in durability, albeit fighting Utsuno Ikuzagami and Yamato no Orochi when they're able to split time in half here. Well, it it also makes Godzilla durable down to a conceptual level because again, time is a concept. If you could split that in half, then again, you really shouldn't have any problem. But overall, do I think Tarrasque clears? Yes. Believe it or not, I actually do. I think he struggles with Destroyer and definitely has a very interesting battle with Burning Godzilla, especially in a tier equalized situation, meaning that, again, everyone is around the hyperversal levels. But that's going to be all today, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe, and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I'll see you guys for the Optimus Prime versus Rayquaza video. Peace.